United States in recent days, you'll know that thousands of people have held vigils across America in honour of an unarmed black teenager who was killed by police in Missouri. Well, protests and moments of silence were held in New York, in Chicago, in Atlanta and elsewhere. This 5 days after Michael Brown was shot dead. After 4 nights of violence, specifically in Ferguson, Missouri, where the 18-year-old died, state police have now taken charge of security. There has been strong criticism of the way police tried to restore order during the protests, and President Obama has said that there was no excuse for violence against police officers, nor excessive force by the police against demonstrators. Well, with me now is Elliott-Cooper, who's a member of the Newham Monitoring Project in East London. That's a grassroots anti-racism organisation. He's doing his PhD on policing and the black community in Britain at the University of Oxford, but has been following the case in America closely. Welcome. Good afternoon. What have you made of events in Missouri?
I think this, what's taking place in Missouri is a part of a long history of police violence against black communities in the country. And particularly recently, we've seen a number of cases of unarmed African-American, particularly teenagers, killed by the police. We've seen recently, Eric Garner, of course, who was selling cigarettes and was choked by police, and passers-by videoed that on their camera phones. We've also seen Azell Ford, a man with mental health problems, who was also shot and unarmed just a couple of days after Michael Brown as well. So we're seeing a series of very intense violence over the past few weeks, but of course a long history of police violence against African-American communities as well.
Mr. Obama has promised a full investigation by the US Department of Justice into the teenager's death, and the FBI has launched its own inquiry, and I quoted what the President has said about the most recent events. Do you draw comfort from that?
I think there's not a particularly comforting history of the police being held accountable for the killings of innocent African Americans, and I think that particularly the FBI, which also is an arm of the American state, is unlikely to hold much comfort for the family and the communities in Ferguson at this time.
There was an interesting change of mood, as I understand it, overnight, and I heard our correspondent actually in the town describing this, because after the 4 nights of violence, state police then took charge of security. Captain Ronald Johnson of the Missouri Highway Patrol, who is an African-American himself and grew up nearby, was named as the new head of the operation, and that seemed to change things.
I think it did. As we know, journalists have been assaulted as well as arrested by the previous police forces that were occupying the area, as well as, of course, the predominantly African-American protesters that were there. And so I think in this kind of environment in which journalists from the Washington Post, the Huffington Post, Al Jazeera, America and what have you are also being assaulted and detained, President Obama had no choice but to make significant alterations to the way in which the demonstrations were being handled.
I mean, the message from Captain Johnson, we all want justice, we all want answers, and the crowd seemed to respond to that.
They did seem to respond to that, and I think that, yeah, they definitely do want answers, and they definitely want some kind of accountability for what's happened.
Okay, Elliott-Cooper, thanks very much indeed for coming in. You're watching BBC News. Let's bring you the weather forecast now. Over the other side of the newsroom, here's Chris Fawkes.